Welcome to a Canadian Highlander video talking about swapping the points on Flash and Protean Hulk. I wanted to make this video because there's a new channel in the Discord where we get to talk about this idea, and I'm particularly interested in exploring what this would look like and what are the considerations, and I would like to play Flash at a lower point value than 7, and I don't think that that means that the Flash Hulk combo should go down, so I thought I'd make a video talking about it. The reasons I think we should lower Flash to make it a viable card independent of Protean Hulk is first that Flash is fun. I mean, I put it second on this bullet point list, but Flash is it's fun to play with cards, and I think I would have fun playing Flash, and I think there's a lot of people who would have fun playing Flash. The second reason is that we are a format that really desires to bring about the ability to play most anything. There are very few cards that are soft banned by the points list, very few cards that are banned entirely. And we want to create as many opportunities for players to play with cards that they want to play with whenever we can. And I want to play with Flash. So let's talk about why I want to and why I think it would be reasonable to do so. Another pillar is when considering competitive balance, we would like a diverse metagame with a variety of different decks, all of which are strong and are good on different axes. It is why combo and aggro and control and tempo and mid-range are all archetypes that are designed to be viable at the highest level in Canadian Highlander. You should be able to pick and choose a deck that matches one of the macro archetypes that exist and see some amount of competitive success. Obviously, not every deck will be top tier, but we want as many decks as possible to fall into that sort of upper echelon of decks that are strong at the top level, that are viable at the top level. There will always be a few decks that are cut above the rest, and there will obviously be decks that you'd consider fringe or unplayable. But whenever possible, we want to push decks towards that sort of middle ground. And lastly, I think Flash is more interesting than Protean Hulk, just as a card, just as what it can do. And I'll discuss that in a little bit more detail later on. The first thing, the biggest consideration, the most important factor in discussing the swapping of Flash and Hulk is if a free Protean Hulk is worth preserving. Protean Hulk is a strong card with a storied history. It's currently 0 points. In this scenario, we would be making it at least 2, up to potentially 5 or 6 points. And it would be killed. Adding points to Protean Hulk would effectively obliterate any deck that's currently playing Protean Hulk. And the number one deck, the most popular, the only deck that really abuses Protean Hulk outside of the Flash combo deck is a combo deck called Pattern Rector. Pattern of Rebirth is essentially it's an enchantment that when it dies, it puts any creature from your library into play. So in combination with Academy Rector, you sacrifice the Academy Rector, you get an enchantment to put onto any creature. You then sacrifice that creature to your sack outlet, Viscera Seer, Carrion Feeder. That finds Protean Hulk, you sacrifice Protean Hulk, go find Karmic Guide, pick up Protean Hulk, sacrifice Protean Hulk, whatever it may be. Essentially, you multi-Hulk pile until you get to just an instant kill. And it's a cool deck, but it's kind of fallen by the wayside. It doesn't have many results in the recent years and recent months. It has very few dedicated pilots. One of the constraints or one of the pieces with this deck is that because it is a combo deck that relies on a creature surviving, any form of creature interaction interacts with it. It requires an enchantment, which I guess you don't really have an opportunity to interact with the enchantment between the sack outlets, but it relies on the graveyard, so graveyard hate and creature interaction all address this, similar to Seeker Walk, in that it's a deck that folds to a wide variety of pieces of hate. With all that said, one of our pillars is to not remove decks, not soft ban decks from the meta for no reason. So we need to really truly believe that the addition of a non-Hulk Flash deck is of greater value to the format than the existence of the fringe deck Pattern Rector. I think Pattern Rector it's worth preserving in the context of course, all decks are worth preserving if they can. But this is not a strong deck. If I jump back, one of the pieces that I noted here is that we want to make many decks strong, and by all accounts, Pattern Rector is not a strong deck. It is a fringe deck. So the question is it worth adding a strong deck to the metagame at the expense of a fringe deck. And like, you can think about it. But let's talk a little bit more about why we could even talk about making this swap for Flash and Hulk. Because one of the big pieces of criticism is that Protean Hulk is not a pointable card, right? Protean Hulk is worth 0 points because it's 0 points right now, and outside of exactly Flash and Pattern Rector, it sees no play. So of its own merits, Protean Hulk is not worth 7 points. But neither is Demonic Consultation or Manifold Key. So let's talk a little bit about the other A plus B combos. So notoriously, there are there's sort of the big 3 A plus Bs in Canadian Highlander. Thassa's Oracle with a card that clears the library, Time Vault with a card that clears, or that untaps Time Vault, and Flash with Hulk. Of these cards, the only 2 that are worth points in isolation as an independent of all of the other cards that exist on the A plus B combo list is Tainted Pact and Flash. Thassa's Oracle, without Consult, Tainted Pact, or Doomsday, is worth no points. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, and Laboratory Maniac are not good cards. Thassa's Oracle is is enough stronger than both of them to be worth points. But independent of the ability to clear the library, Thassa's Oracle is a 2-mana 1/3 that scries between 0 and 2 to, up to max 5 if you have a bunch of devotion. And it doesn't even scry, it just puts 1 on top and the rest on the bottom, or up to 1. Like, Thassa's Oracle is an unplayable Magic card unless you're clearing the library. And the only 3 cards in this format that we regularly see play that clear the library is Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pact, and Doomsday. I guess Cephalid Breakfast is a deck in this format. It's not very popular, but Cephalid Breakfast, if it milled the whole library, or Hermit Druid, right? Thassa's Oracle is sort of the key piece to all of it that makes those things tick. Cephalid Breakfast milling into, Dread Return, into pick up a Laboratory Maniac is a lot weaker than Thassa's Oracle. So Thassa's Oracle, and with the library clears, is very strong, but by itself is unplayable. And the same thing is true for Time Vault. If you're not untapping Time Vault every turn, it's not a good card. Like, skipping a turn to untap Time Vault is really bad. It's just not, you get 2 turns later, but your opponent gets 2 turns first. It's not a strong card. So really, Voltaic Key, Manifold Key, Voltaic Servant, Tezzeret the Seeker, 4-mana Teferi, all these cards that untap Time Vault, those cards are 0 points by themselves, and Time Vault is 0 points by itself. And the same is true for Thassa's Oracle with the library clears. And the same is true for Flash. Protean Hulk by itself is 0 points, and Flash by itself is not 0 points. And so I think people regularly think, well, Flash is the card that breaks Protean Hulk. But I think there's a little bit more nuance than that. You can easily argue that Voltaic Key, Manifold Key, Voltaic Servant, or Tezzeret the Seeker are the cards that break Time Vault. Like, Time Vault's not the broken card, it's the cards that untap Time Vault. But it's a hard sell, right? Because if you were to look at this points list and try to make Time Vault be worth 0 points, you have to do some really wonky stuff to the points list. You would have to point Demonic Consultation, Doomsday, Tainted Pact, probably, Nomads in core, you'd have to point Voltaic Key, Manifold Key, Voltaic Servant, Tezzeret the Seeker. You'd probably have to point Hermit Druid. There's a bunch of cards that Thassa's Oracle and Time Vault rely upon, or that are able to take advantage of Thassa's Oracle and Time Vault, that would all have to be pointed to preserve the A plus B 7-point or 6-point combo in the Thassa's Oracle or Time Vault examples. Outside of Tainted Pact, which is the only one of these cards that's pointed, all these other cards are not worth points in and of themselves. Because you aren't going to point 4 or 5 different cards to pay for the sins of Time Vault, Thassa's Oracle, or Flash, those are the cards that we end up pointing. We point Thassa's Oracle so that we don't have to point Consult, Doomsday, Tainted Pact, Hermit Druid, and the Cephalid Breakfast combo. We point Time Vault so we don't have to point Voltaic Key, Manifold Key, Voltaic Servant, and Tezzeret the Seeker. We point Flash so we don't have to point exactly Protean Hulk. The Flash Hulk combo is the only A plus B combo where there's only one A and there's only one B. Or at least there's only one A and only one B worth 7 points. There are probably Bs to Thassa's Oracle, like Leveler, that is worth fewer than 7 points if the only option to combine with Thassa's Oracle is Thassa's Oracle and Leveler. But because there's really efficient versions of the effect, like Consult and Tainted Pact, Thassa's Oracle bears the brunt of all of those cards as a collective. The library clears. Right now, Flash is carrying the burden of not just the cards that Flash can flash, but also the points of Protean Hulk. How many points does Hulk add to Flash, right? If Hulk did not exist, if Protean Hulk was not a card, Flash would not be worth 7 points. The next best thing you can do with Flash is probably one of flashing Academy Rector, flashing Arena Rector, or flashing Atraxa, Worldspine, Torsten, Volpor Tyrant, etc. What's the Archon? Archon of Cruelty? That's another one that I should have probably listed here. Those A plus B combos are not 7 points worth of A plus B combo, because the Flash Hulk combo instantly wins the game with no permanence, no combat step, and almost no ability to interact with it. That's why it's 7 points. Those other combos, these other ways of flashing, do not win the game on the spot. They're very strong. They're definitely combos, right? And they have a strong impact. But the A plus B combo of Entomb plus Reanimate is clearly not a 7-point combo because it doesn't win the game on the spot at instant speed, dodging almost all forms of interaction. That's what makes the Flash Hulk combo specifically 7 points. So if we evaluate Flash on the strengths of the next best thing you could do with it, it would probably live between 1 and 4 points. And likely it would be 2 or 3. I think 4 is probably a very safe place for it to start. I think 3 is a reasonable place for it to start. 2, it's going to see a ton of play and get stress tested very quickly, and I think it's probably more than 1 point worth of strength. When we look at this list of Rector, and then all of the different things you could flash in, that seems pretty strong. It's definitely strong, but it's not 7 points, which means that Hulk by itself adds at least 3 points to Flash. Flash is eating 3 points of the sins of Protean Hulk specifically, which is interesting, because that's not really what's happening with Thassa's Oracle or Time Vault. Like, Thassa's Oracle is eating the 7 points for the sins of all of the other library clears in aggregate, which is like 7 cards. And Time Vault is eating the sins of all of the other untappers, which is like 7 cards. Like, the Flash Hulk dichotomy very specifically has the ability, lives in a very unique space, which I think is interesting, and leads me to conclude that Protean Hulk is a 3-point addition, at least a 3-point addition, to the Flash card. Which leads me to kind of my final argument, or my final point here. I think Flash is way cooler than Protean Hulk. There's a lot of interesting and brewing space that exists with Flash. There's these combos that exist, Flash Rector, all of these other Flash cards that lead to the ability to brew decks like a Flash Natural Order deck, where you can either flash into Atraxa or Norder into it. Flash decks with Reanimate that will flash Atraxas and then immediately reanimate them. Both of the types of Flash combo decks that exist. These are all strong decks. These are decks that would see play. They would be, brought to tournaments, and people would achieve competitive success with them, even with Flash at 3 or 4 points. And they'd probably see a lot of success if Flash was done at 1 or 2. Flash is known, it's strong in Vintage Cube. We often talk about being Vintage Cube constructed. It's, of course, further and further from the a principle of the format, but it's certainly a comparison that we like to lean into. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with Flash. And Flash taking the sins of Protean Hulk, the instant speed, no permanence on board, no combat step, combo that you can't interact with, it is okay, I think, to lose what Hulk is bringing to the table in terms of Pattern Rector in order to open up the ability to play with all these cool versions of Flash. So I think that's it. That's mostly my arguments. It's mostly my points. Flash and Hulk are very unique in their ability to trade points with each other in a way that no other A plus B or any of the other big A plus B combo decks are able to do. You can't we will never be able to play with a Fair Thassa's Oracle, and frankly, there's nothing really you can do with a Fair Thassa's Oracle. Fair, of course, referring to the non, A plus B combo version of it. And the same is true for Time Vault. Like, the Time Vault that is just untapping isn't doing anything interesting. But there's something interesting you can do with Flash when it's not flashing Protean Hulk. And the fact that there's this whole opportunity to explore an entire archetype of deck and design space that is locked behind the minimum 3-point sins of the specific card Protean Hulk, to me, is worth making the sacrifice to Pattern Rector. I'm okay with losing Pattern Rector as a viable deck because 3 points, at minimum 3 points on Protean Hulk would destroy. I mean, the deck's already not good. It would go from fringe to basically unplayable. And that loss to me in exchange for opening up, Flash Natural Order decks, Flash Reanimate decks, Flash Rector decks. There's a lot of cool stuff in my mind that you can do with this, and a lot of cool design space that we can explore, and deck space that we can explore that is strong, that would make an impact on the competitive metagame, to make it, in my mind, that Hulk is a sacrifice that I'm prepared to make, and Pattern Rector is a sacrifice I'm prepared to make in exchange for a Fair Flash combo deck, and Fair, of course, being not really a true way to speak about it, but a fairer Flash or a non-Hulk Flash combo deck. So that's my time. Thanks for watching.